I'm on the line now. I know we've had a lot to say about the Suburban Rail Loop and the merits of the project. And I was listening to callers to Tom's program, actually, and a lot rang in and said, look, we really like the project. I agree. I'm sure in a perfect world, it would be great to build a $180 billion rail that would link one side of the city to the other and stop along the airport on the way. Like, great, fantastic. But the reality of the situation is we are broke. We cannot afford it, and we especially cannot afford it without federal help. And the more stories that come out about the government, the federal government, saying, well, you know, that $2.2 billion we promised, well, we'd much rather see that go to the airport rail links. So you're in this situation now where you have to make a decision. And I said this last week. I feel like on this project, it's like a company that's trading while insolvent. They continue to spend money, they continue to sign contracts, and all the while it gets to the point where Victoria is now going to have to pay out these contracts if we don't build it, or maybe build part of it. And even then, I don't think we can afford that. So what's your view? Is it a cruel hoax, as Peter Dutton said? I'm going to play you a little bit of his chat with Tom this morning.
The problem is that I think this has turned into a cruel hoax. And I don't think Jacinta Allan has a dollar to a name that she has to put to the Suburban Rail Loop. The Victorian Labor Party is essentially bankrupt. They are driving the economy into rack and ruin.
Okay, so that is the opposition leader, Peter Dutton. Now, here's Jacinta Allan's response today.
Because if he did spend some time in Victoria, he'd know that the Suburban Rail Loop is the project that Victorians want, Victorians need, that they've supported it at state elections, at federal elections.
So is it the project that you want? 133693. I'll tell you the project I want, not that my opinion really matters, but the project I want is I just want them to fix the potholes on the roads and make the roads smooth and safe, because wherever you go, you think the joint looks like a dump. Like there are potholes everywhere, there's mess on the side of the roads, everything looks filthy. And then you go onto, say, a private road like Eastlink or CityLink, and everything's nice because you pay for it. And I wonder what other Victorians think. Is it just me? Because I don't like this idea that you've got this mandate because you were elected on a mandate. You're elected on that mandate, which was a long time ago now, when you had money to build it, and especially if you don't have federal government support. And I reckon the government's a little bit snookered here at both a federal and a state level, because we're coming up to an election. I mean, the Werribee by-election, for example, is going to be this weekend. Like, can you imagine the fallout if the Labor Party doesn't win that seat, which is looking like it's a possibility now? So does the government still have a mandate to build the SRL? 133693. Leith Van Alton is the chief economist at Macro Business. He also used to work for the Victorian Treasury. We speak to him regularly on the program. Leith, hello.
G'day, Jacqui. How are you?
What do you think of the words cruel hoax from the opposition leader today?
Yeah, look, there's certainly an element of truth here. Look, Victoria's net debt per capita is the worst in the nation. We've got the lowest credit rate in the nation. This project's not affordable. So when the Parliamentary Budget Office did its cost-benefit analysis on the project, it found that it would actually deliver a negative return. So for every dollar spent, we'd only get about 60 to 70 cents per dollar spent, which is obviously not a good return. That's a negative return. And obviously it's unaffordable when we have a state that is drowning in debt. And it's more unaffordable when, a lot of the first stage of the project, which is about $35 billion, is unfunded. So in the Victoria's own budget, it said that it expected about $12 billion of funding from the federal government. Well, where's that going to come from? The feds don't seem to want to support that. And the biggest issue here, Jacqui, is that if we go ahead with this project, well, we are going ahead with this project, it means that if you're a resident of Melbourne's west or north in one of those growth areas where you're already starved of infrastructure, you have a lack of roads, rail, public hospitals, everything.
Yep.
You're effectively going to be starved for infrastructure for decades because of this project, because all the resources are going to be going into this rail line, which delivers a net benefit and only serves a very small proportion of the population. So I'd be very angry if I lived in a growth area like in Melbourne's west or north, like Truganina or something, because or Melton. Melton's still operating, I think, on a diesel train line. But there are way better ways to spend our money, and these places are going to get squeezed. They're going to get starved of funding to build this boondoggle of a project which we don't need, which unfortunately the Premier has signed on to.
Is Melton still operating on a diesel? Well, that's just me thinking out loud, Leith, but fascinating. I did not know that. If you live in the Melton area, 133693. But can I ask you, Leith, about the word mandate that the Premier has used today? Does she still have a mandate to build this? And when she talks about that being elected to build this, do voters have a right to change their mind if the economy and the position of our state changes as well?
Absolutely. The circumstances have changed. So when this project was devised pre-COVID in 2018, before the 2018 election, it was devised by former Premier Daniel Andrews. It was written on the back of a napkin. Its 3 stages were projected to cost $50 billion. That's now been revised up to around $200 billion. So it's a massive change. And when Jacinta Allan came in as Premier in late 2023, she should have scrapped the project. And all the infrastructure experts, etc., were begged her to not go ahead, but instead she went ahead and signed the tunnelling contracts and the first several contracts for the project, and that effectively locked us in. So we're in a bit of a catch-22. If we go ahead and build it, we're going to drown ourselves in debt. We're going to divert the state's infrastructure spending into this project away from other areas. But if we cancel it, we're going to be up for billions of dollars in compensation to tear up all the contracts. So she's really snookered us here.
So what do you think should and what do you think will happen in regards to the SRL?
As I said, we're in a real bind here because she signed a whole bunch of contracts. She's just, employed 100 or so public sector
on big money,
on 350,000 average, roughly. So we've already got a lot of sunk cost. I think, if anything, she should try and delay the project, and the next government should try and delay the project and try and phase it and somehow try and get the costs under control. But again, we're snookered because she signed onto it. She should never have signed onto it. And even if we cancel it now, we've got so much sunk costs. We've got all these contracts written that can you imagine the break fees in those contracts? We're talking billions of dollars that will be thrown down thrown into the bin.
So we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. Leith Van Onselen, always good to have you on the program.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqui. Anytime.
Well, that wasn't a very positive outlook, was it? What do we do? Stephen, what's your view?
Oh, God, I feel hopeless now after listening to him, Jacqui. He's right on the money. That's exactly what I remember reading. She signed contracts she shouldn't have. Look, Peter Dutton said it was a hoax. My Oxford Dictionary defines hoax as defraud, fleeced, missiled and swindled. That's why I feel like we've been dudded by this Premier. She's introduced that many taxes, Jacqui, to pay for this white elephant. The Airbnb tax, the COVID land tax, the vacant land tax. There's so many people that have lost businesses, sold their second properties like my family. They've sold holiday houses, hobby farms just to pay for this. And she says in her statement when she was asked to reply to Peter Dutton, Victorians have asked for this. I don't know anyone who's asked for this. She never asks us what we want. She never takes questions from the public. And every time you have her on, she never takes questions from us. What is she afraid of?
Stephen, thank you. Look, it's difficult. We had this discussion last week about taking calls when you have a politician in the studio. And I know back our long-term listeners will say, well, John Howard did it and other politicians have done it. Difficult to do when they're on the phone. You do your best to interview them. You get them for a very short period of time. And also, I feel like if I was advising her, would I get her to take calls? Well, look, it's a tough one. In opposition, they always love to take calls because they're in opposition. Let's wait and see if there is a change of government, whether the new leadership, if there is, takes calls. It's a good question, Stephen. It's one we grapple with here on the program a lot. Thank you. And Sergio, hello.